Hello, hello, hello. Sitting here, minding my own business, clearing my own throat. There we go. All right. Hey, friends. My name's Dan. Thank you for joining me today. I am taking a nice break from my big painting, which I can't wait to get back to, and also a wedding painting I started on Sunday that I also can't wait to get back to. But in the meantime, I have a couple little spot illustrations. So this is Daily Art Adventure number 634. Spot illustrations, or a quick drawing for a quick buck. Let me move you now, show you my table. So these are illustrations for a book. I've already done several illustrations for this client in this style, this technique. It's a slightly shortcutted version of CF Payne or Chris Payne's technique. I have a whole playlist on my YouTube channel of me explaining the CF Payne technique, and this is again sort of a cheap version of that. So the 4 illustrations I have to do, again, they're spot illustrations. One is the state of South Carolina with all the counties outlined, and I'm going to highlight this one county. Better make sure I do the right one, shouldn't I? It is this one. All right. And then a comparison chart, the northern states, for this is all about the Civil War, northern states, southern states, a hip bone shattered by a mini ball, and then finally a painting of a mini ball. So here's how this technique goes. You're welcome to watch. I'm painting on single ply Bristol board, and of course I took the liberty, if you will, of tracing. So I just real quick explanation. Turned on my light table and traced these illustrations. Make sense? All right, you understand that. And Chris Payne's technique starts out with outline drawing done outlined with black colored pencil. Okay, so here's a ordinary Prismacolor in a holder. By the way, these holders are a great thing. So colored pencil followed by, which I'm getting ready to do right now, followed by acrylic mixed with gesso. Okay? The idea, and I'm going to go ahead and paint in this whole area. Just basically an abstract background there, brownish abstract background. And as you can see, I'm actually being a little bit heavy in my application here today. I have nearly obliterated the drawing, but not quite. You can still see it. I can see it well enough that I can mix up now. Let me move you over so you're, here we go. So I can now paint again, acrylic paints mixed with gesso, because we want the painting to have a tooth Okay, we don't want it smooth like acrylic paints. We want it to be slightly gritty, if you will. And the painting process here is very quick. Not a great deal of detail. Just basically laying in flat colors. Again, for those of you who might have missed my CF Payne series a couple years ago, Chris Payne, or CF Payne, one of the best known illustrators in America. He did the back cover of Reader's Digest for many years, and has been on the cover of Time magazine many times. Look him up, CF Payne. And I had the privilege of meeting him many years ago when I first started my career as a full-time illustrator. I'm probably getting myself a little bit too much detail here. A little bit. I lived in Fort Worth, Texas at the time, and I had, for some reason, I don't know what possessed me, I had the sense, common sense that is, to look up other artists or illustrators in my area. And I found indeed that there was something called the Dallas Society of Illustrators. So I hurried on over to their monthly meeting, and among the many people that I met there was one character named Chris Payne. He probably went on to become more famous than all the rest of us put together, perhaps. Anyway, uber famous, if you will. And I am doing more detail than I should be doing right here. Forgive me, I'm having too much time talking. Thanks, sweet girl. All right, so that's done. Next, we're going to do this shattered hip bone. So let me point out that this is a mini ball. It's actually pronounced minier, but in America we call it mini. This was invented during the Civil War and wreaked horrible damage on the bodies of men who got hit by it. Every war is terrible. All bullet wounds are terrible. But this was really a step forward in the destructiveness of war. And the hero in our story, I was going to say, the mini ball is made out of lead. Now lead, after it gets old, let me show you. After lead gets old, it turns this color. But I want to show a new mini ball. So it's going to be a cool color, so I did it warm background. This bone, on the other hand, is going to be warm. The bone itself is going to be a warm color. Therefore, I'm going to try to do the, if I can get things going right, I'm going to do the background in cool-ish colors. I don't want high chroma though. I don't want real intense colors. I want it kind of everything in this book is sort of sepia tone-ish. Does that make sense? All right. And again, mixing gouache with the acrylic so that it's toothy. Now, part of the genius of Chris Payne's technique is that he starts his illustration with a fairly simple and hard outline edge, hard edge, hard edge illustration with Prismacolor colored pencil. But the very next thing he does, as you can see, is he I'm sorry, I know I'm speaking in such a halting manner because I'm doing so many other things while I'm talking to you. He does a translucent, can I emphasize that word strongly enough? He does a translucent acrylic over the whole thing so that the pencil drawing gets pushed back considerably. You see what I mean? So the hard, sort of cartoony outline of the hard edge pencil gets diminished considerably by the acrylic. So again, that's part of the, in my opinion, part of the genius of the technique. Now, if you, after this, for those of you who have to leave before we get any further, after this, I'll be doing a watercolor wash over the entire illustration, brown wash over the whole thing, without worrying really at all about the subject matter. I just cover up the whole thing with watercolor, lift it out. And then now, Chris Payne's technique is after that, he does then a thin oil paint wash, I would call it, a combination of purple and green, which results in a very cool neutral gray. And so this is the shadow, a shadow of the bone, and also the hole inside the bone. So the hero in our book suffered this injury. Nearly died, of course. Nearly everybody who got injured in the Civil War died because they didn't really know about germs yet. So the survival rate of wounds was atrocious, of course. So Chris's technique is then watercolor, lift out areas, oil, lift out areas with a kneaded eraser, and then finishing with colored pencil and I can't talk. Colored pencil and oil and or acrylics. Sorry to be so vague, but that's the way it is. All right, that's done. One more to go. Oh, this one, yeah. Okay, this, I'm not going to paint each individual little piece. I'm just going to give a general warm wash, again, mixed with gouache. Warm wash mixed with gouache over the whole thing. This particular illustration is going to have quite a bit of type added to it. After the illustration is finished, I'll be coming back and doing. All right, I think I'm gonna let that go, just like that. Oh, I'm going to do a little bit of color on top of that. Bags of money might be green. Okay. And the Lincoln-looking character, I don't know if that's supposed to be Lincoln or not. He looks slightly Lincolnish. Do him with just a dark neutral tone. So the comparison here is the North versus the South. Population, finances, train, and industry. there was evidently quite a pronounced contrast between those two. I'm just using a plastic lid. The lid actually to my, here it is, here where I'm mixing my paints. The lid to the bucket of gouache, just because I didn't want to run downstairs and get a palette, so just using what's near at hand. All right, I think we can keep right on going. Yeah, this one's dry, so let's do this next. So I'm done with the acrylics, at least for the moment. Now it's time for watercolors. So here's one of my smaller watercolor trays. Not the smallest, but smaller. And back to a large brush. And I want to mix up generally a neutral brown. I want this to be a little bit more neutral, cooler brown. Okay, that will be dry in a few minutes. I'm going to add a bluish tint, just a tint. This is not exactly Chris Payne technique that I'm doing right now by adding blue. That's all right. I can go off book if I want to, because the ocean is down here, of course, so just a hint of blue. Most of the blue will be done in colored pencil. All right, I'm going to set that aside, let that dry. And which one came next? The Minier ball. I only know it's Minier because while I was doing research for the illustration, as I read a little bit of the history, invented in France by a man named Minier. But again, the Americans took it, anglicized it, and just call it a mini ball. But it's confusing because it sounds like they're saying like it's a miniature ball, which is certainly not at all the case. It's not a ball, and it's not mini, but that's what it got called. All right, so that's good enough. Next, the shattered hip bone. So as you can see, this is pretty easy. Not anything tricky. In a few minutes then, when these are all dry, I'm going to come and lift out some of this watercolor for highlights. In fact, part of the genius of Chris Payne's technique is and I'm not going to do his whole technique, but the genius of his technique is that he utilizes a lifting out technique twice in the course of doing every illustration. He lifts, if you will, twice. Now, some of this is not dry, but I'm not going to worry about it. And I've taught over the years several times here and there that the shortest route from start to realism, if you're painting and you want to achieve a believable, realistic, modeled effect, that is shaded, rounded effect, the fastest way to do that is to utilize a lifting technique, or subtractive technique, or another word for that is sfumato, Italian word for smoke. As opposed to chiaroscuro, now we're getting into art history. The classic example of the sfumato look is Mona Lisa. So Chris Payne uses the lifting technique twice in his technique. Again, that's as far as I'm going to go with it. You can go back and look at some of my earlier videos of him if you want to. Now, I guess I'll keep broadcasting. Sorry for the noise, just a minute with a hairdryer. All right, sorry about that racket. Now, this lifting is what comes next. And there are several different ways to lift watercolor out. And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure which one I'm going to use yet. Here's one, is Q-tip, dipped in water. This is the county that's going to be made lighter or a different color. I'm actually probably going to paint that. Here's either I'm going to just wipe away the whole state. That would be fast. But to tell you the truth, I'm thinking about making it a little more interesting. And lifting out inside each individual county so that we get I'm not sure what to call it, sort of a little bit of a three-dimensional effect, so it's not so flat. This is obviously a very boring, if you will, spot illustration. I mean, what's the word, pedantic can you get, really? Right? Just a map of the state in the chief county will be highlighted probably as red. But here's what I'm doing right now. Well, it'll take me a while, and probably I'll take a break from broadcasting because this is going to get a little bit boring. But I want to see what this looks like before. If I change my mind, I can just pick up a tissue, dip it in water or a rag, and just wipe off the whole state up to the edge. Makes sense? Of course I can do that. But before I do that, I want to say, yeah, but it might look kind of cool. Because as you can see, I'm getting little, I hope you can see, I'm getting little dark, soft edges because I'm not going quite up to the line of each county. Does that make sense? So I'm just trying to make a horribly boring spot illustration. Yeah, I think I'm going to like this. Trying to make a spot illustration interesting. So that maybe a fifth grader didn't do it. I'm trying to avoid that rather, so simple it's just boring. Yeah, so I think I'm liking this. Now, that means this broadcast is way too boring for you to watch. Hello, Matt's Art Stuff. Thanks for saying hi. So I think I should really take a little break here. Before I go, then I'll just review where I'm going from here. All right, so with all four of these illustrations, and again, so I'm departing slightly from Chris Payne's technique. After I've lifted out the watercolor on all four illustrations, I'm going to take them outside and spray them with lacquer mat. Now, unfortunately, lacquer mat is no longer on the market. So I need to find out, because I'm down to my last 2 cans. I need to find out what lacquer mat, think of it as a workable fixative on steroids. think of as a super powerful, workable fixative. That is very, very rough. Now, along with the roughness, of course, if you have intuition, visual intuition, then you should be saying, oh, if it's very rough, well, that means it's going to kind of add sort of a foggy, misty, you know, fog. I'm sorry, just being rather redundant. And if you think that, then you're exactly correct. You're correcting, your intuition is correct. So the lacquer mat, which is, again, it's very rough. So of course, yes, it does add a fog, if you will, to the finished illustrations. Let me pick up one of my finished illustrations and say that the lacquer mat is in fact partly responsible for the soft, foggy, I keep using the same words over and over, I can't think of a better one, the feel of this. Now, these are finished. Let me tell you where we go. So after spraying with nuclear-powered workable fixative, and by the way, it smells to high heaven. It is I'm sure that's why they took it off the market. And I will spray it outside, and I'll let it stay outside so we'll take a break there. Anyway, then I come back here to my studio, and I'm going to finish with pastel pencils. Okay, so I have a whole bushel of pastel pencils there ahead of me on my desk. And in this case, on this particular illustration, I will use the pencils to make this Star County red, and I'll also do some pale blue down here along the ocean. So I want it to be a map of South Carolina, of course, with all the counties outlined, but I want it to be interesting. So you can see the effect that I'm after here with the softening each of the divider lines between the counties. I know very little about South Carolina myself. I live about here in North Carolina. North Carolina has 100 counties. South Carolina is smaller, and I think is generally more rural even than North Carolina. But during the Civil War, Charleston, which is where, around here I think, during the colonial period, Charleston, South Carolina was one of the chief ports on the East Coast. Boston, New York, Charleston, I think might be a fair comparison. Those are the three biggest ports on the East Coast. And before and during the Civil War, of those three, Charleston had either the advantage or the disadvantage of having that Southern aristocracy atmosphere or attitude. All right, I'm rambling long enough. I am going to take a break right now, finish this, and I'll bring you back in when I'm lifting out the watercolor, perhaps on the next illustration. Okay? Thanks for watching. Be back in, probably 10 minutes. Thanks. Bye-bye. Get it. There we go. All right. So I've done the lifting out on this one. That was pretty simple. And am now doing here's my photo reference, now doing the shattered hip bone, which gives me the opportunity to show a little more realistically the effect that this lifting out has. Again, I said earlier that not just pertaining to this particular technique, but any technique, watercolor, oil, acrylic, perhaps even, certainly including charcoal, graphite, the fastest way to achieve a believable shading, modeled effect, rounded shading effect. The fastest way to do that is to employ, whenever possible, a lifting technique, which is what I'm doing right here. Because it's especially because of the soft edges that you're not generally coming in here with a razor sharp edge with a brush, but you're using generally a rounded thing like a Q-tip, tissue, a piece of Kleenex, and so on and so forth. So it creates very quickly this rounded look, mottled shaded shadow look. I'm trying to decide which word to use there, aren't I? All right, so nearly finished. Yeah. And again, I'm having a little bit of unintended stuff here because I think I've normally done my Chris Payne illustrations on a multimedia board, a illustration, and it stands up to a little more scrubbing. This single ply Bristol board it's going to be okay. The texture it's interesting, but it's not quite the norm. The Bristol board is dissolving a little bit, which really works well here because it looks a lot like a bone texture. And of course, I could be just more gentle if it was a real issue, but it's not. I'm just gonna proceed playing with it as I go. I think I'm gonna call that done. Okay, so now I'm down to this, and this of course is just a graphic chart. And I think I'm going to do, I'm making this up, if you can't tell. I think I'm going to do, good, Susan, good to hear from you. Glad you find it interesting. I think I'm going to do that similar to what I did with the state outline. That is, I'm going to lift out areas up close to the lines so that I get a bit of a halo effect. Let me show you the state that I finished here. I started working on it before I left. See? So it's just a interesting effect, which is really all I care about here. Often I think in the world of spot illustrations, which is certainly a good description of what it is I'm doing here. In the world of spot illustrations, it's trying to take something that's pretty boring and just give it a little bit of a twist. Don't go crazy with it, you know. They are just spot illustrations. You don't want to be pretentious. But if you can make it look interesting, that's a good thing. So I think this will work. Also, by the way, of course, with spot illustrations, really, any kind of illustration these days, what my client is going to be getting from me is a JPEG sent through email. So he may not even ever see the finished illustration, because my job now, unlike in the olden days, man, I can't believe it, in the olden days, we used to finish illustrations and literally mail or ship the finished hard copy to our client. And man, I did some really nice illustrations back in the day, and technically they belonged to me. The client is supposed to return it to me, but usually they didn't, and I didn't, you know, I was too busy doing other stuff. So I would like to have some of those illustrations. But nowadays, I like the arrangement better because, of course, I will tweak things in Photoshop. So really the finished illustration, the hard copy, is not what my client is going to get. That's not the finished job. The finished job is the JPEG the digital file is finished, because I will, like in the case of this particular illustration, of course, I'm going to do all the, lay in all the type, the text on top of it. I'll probably crop this and so on and so forth. So now here's another thought, thinking out loud here. So this column is the Union, this is the Confederacy, the North, the South. I had wondered about distinguishing them in some way in their color. Seems like that would be a good idea. Blue and gray, in fact, wouldn't it? That'd be a good. But right now, because I did this column first, nah. Okay, I was wondering about leaving this way, but no, I don't think so. I will do a slight difference in color, but I'll do it in the subsequent layer, the colored pencil layer. I think this looks so much better than that, so I'm going to do it on both sides. As you can see, of course, I'm working toward a loose, natural, abstract texture here. I'm not, you know, this is supposed to look like an illustration. I want it to look like an illustration. I don't want it to look like something that was done in Photoshop, right? I want it to look like a real handmade. Why? Partly because, of course, because I want it to match the rest of the illustrations that I've done for the book. Fair enough? Thump, 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 thump. In this case, I'm going to lift out. I think this is a bag of money. I better know what it is. At first, when I was looking at the earlier illustration that he sent to me, I thought it was a dollar bill. And that's a terrible looking dollar bill. And I said, oh, I think it's supposed to be a money bag. Okay. So I stayed with the money bag motif. All right, almost there. And I'm happy to say that, generally speaking, I'm happy with the effect that I've achieved here. Looks all right. All right, so break time. I am going to take all 4 of my illustrations. I'm upstairs in my studio here today. I'm going to take them, run downstairs, go outside in the driveway, and spray them with lacquer mat. All right, good time. All right, we're back. Thank you again for joining me, you guys. I've done a little bit of work on this already with a black pastel pencil, and for the fine lines, a black Prismacolor color pencil. Now I'm coming in with starting to do some of the highlights with, again, pastel. So at this point, this is where I am parting for this particular job, for this client and this book. For some reason, I decided to not do the CF paint technique and instead go with pastel. So I love the look. The downside, of course, of pastels is that they're never stable unless you put them behind glass. So that's a little bit unfortunate. Blending with a blending stub, also called a tortillion, unless I don't know if it's Latino, that would be tortillo. I really don't know which one it is. Tortillion is how it's spelled for you English-speaking people, but it might be a tortillo. It's got a double L in it. Anyway, that's this thing, blending stub. Better than using your finger. I think all of us, if you're an artist when you're a kid, of course you use your fingers because you've always got them attached to the end of your hand. But it puts oils on the paper. No big deal for an illustration that's here today and gone tomorrow, but still, I think a little bit more control using the tool instead of your fingers. So that looks like a nasty wound, doesn't it? That's part of the objective here, is to make us go, ooh. James Coker, Major James Coker, C-O-K-E-R, if you want to look him up. Went on to become a famous citizen of South Carolina. And it is his great-grandson, I believe, who's writing the book about this man. Pretty inspiring. Yeah, got a musket ball or mini ball through his thigh. So it's nearly a miracle that he survived. It really is. Because the great majority of soldiers who suffered an injury, anything like this, did not survive because the infection rate was outrageous. According to the story, his wife hunted him down, found him in a prison camp with a feverish, delusional, is that the word? That's not the word, it's not delusional, what is it? Anyway, not in his right mind, as you can imagine, with infection, and somehow, amazingly, was able to nurse him back to health. He walked for the rest of his life with a cane and a limp. And again, all that is part of the inspiring story. Went on to become one of the great industrialists of the state of South Carolina. So that's pretty close to done. Let's just do a little bit more, some of these details, the cracks in the bone, some of which I think are natural and some of which are the result of the trauma. Again, I'm looking at a pretty good reference photo here. So darks first, lights last. Same rule applies to drawing as applies to painting. And I'll show you in a second how to really make these what are now just dark lines and dots really pop and really make them look three-dimensional. It's a trick, so to speak, trick that every artist should know. Okay, so that I'm done with that. You can pick up the light tool again, and our light source is coming from the upper right. So along the lower right edge of each of these black lines, we put a little, and dots, we put a little highlight. And it really makes those things look like a crack. I'll zoom in here in just a minute and let you see. Because it looks like the light is just catching the edge of this texture. I started with a beige pencil and then have graduated to white. I thought that white might be overdoing it, but I don't think it is. I think it's making it show up quite nicely. All right, let me zoom you guys in close as I can, just so you can see. Isn't that fun? I mean, fun as an illustration. Not at all fun as a wound inflicted on a human being. Whew. No matter who inflicted it or what they were doing. Oh, I'd much rather take a bullet to the head than a hip. All right. I don't think, in this case, I'm going to do much of anything in all this outlying area. Maybe it'll soften the shadow just a little bit here. Okay, since I've gone that far, then just for fun, let's do the exciting part here. It's always like Christmas. Unwrap it, Daddy, unwrap it. This masking tape thing is just a trick that I do a lot. Anytime I'm doing charcoal, graphite, watercolor illustrations on paper, I guess that's all on paper. I tend to prefer a nice clean look. There we go. So there's a finished illustration. Again, I will scan that on my computer. Oh, you know what? Hang on. I just realized I want some darker shadows up here in this hole inside the bone here. All right, I'm not going to sign this one, I don't think. There's a spot illustration. All right, done with that. Which one should we do next? Yeah, let's do the state of South Carolina. I'm going to pick up a red pencil, pastel pencil. Could you do this with colored pencil? Of course you could. It would be more stable. The pastel, of course, gives you a more intense color and a powdery, of course, texture. And for some reason, when I started this job, it's just what I felt like doing. I don't know if these are the same color. Nope. Having a hard time sharpening these. I actually inherited these pencils from many of them, not all, many of them from an elderly artist who was hanging up her brushes, shall we say. So I always use them with gratitude and respect. She was actually a very good artist. And I don't say that about everybody. I don't mean because I'm trying to be snobbish, but I'm just, at the moment, I'm just trying to be realistic and say, you know, this woman was a very, very fine draftsman. I have a couple of her pieces laying around in honor of her memory. There. Again, trying to make it look, again, like an illustration, not like a piece of graphic art, you know, computer-generated stuff. And just for fun, a little bit of color here along the coast. I'm going to come back in a minute and fade out this blue, blend it. Again, my goal, especially with this illustration, is to take a potentially deadly boring illustration, a map for goodness sake, and just give it a little bit of creative pop. And I'm quite happy with how it's looking. There. Isn't that sweet? Oh, good. Sure. Let's go ahead and unmask this one too, so we get the full impact. Yeah, I think that turned out just fine. There. And again, you see the random strokes, the greenish, yellowish stuff in here, and these marks, completely abstract, just to create interest. Right? So 2 down, 1 bone, 1 mat. One more simple one, this mini ball, and I'm not terribly thrilled with how the background of this one turned out, so I might, yeah, you can do some tricky stuff. Bear with me for just a minute while I go to my closet and get down a big box of pastels. You guys, unless you've seen me do one of these, you've probably never seen my pastels before. It's a medium I used to use a lot more than I have in the last 10 years. Just for fun. I'll show you. And again, I inherited this particular tackle box from the same lady because I think it was a good idea. I have since, of course, rearranged it completely. But yeah, tackle box, not a bad idea. These slots down here used to have, and will again have the pencils in them that I'm using. So there you go, all the usual tools that one might use if you're a pastel artist. I have other pastel kits downstairs. At the moment, I'm looking for brownish stuff. Bear with me for just a minute while I find some brown pastels. All right. Let me see if I can, for some reason my live chats are not showing up. Give me just a minute and see if I can. Sorry if you're watching this. Technical difficulties. Trying to get my, evidently I'm going to have to turn my iPad, which is one of my monitors where I catch your, I have to turn it off and restart it. I'm so sorry. I'll be back doing illustrations in just a minute. Technical illustrations are just a bother, aren't they? All right, so I've found some. Found some pastel. I'm just going to use this to sort of neutralize and lighten the top half of that illustration. Combine these two colors, brown and yellow. Naples yellow, yellow ochre maybe, combination. And I'm going to use my fingers. After all that talk about not using fingers, this area is too big to blend with the blending stub. I'm just trying to calm down. There's too much energy in the top half of this illustration. That's better, although I'm not thrilled with the color. So it's a little bit too intense and a little bit too dark. I think. Hang on. Now my iPad is cranking up here afresh. So I've got a piece of pale blue. It's not blue enough. All right, let's try that. Pastel is fun, isn't it? Pastels are they're the most, as far as I can think of, they are the most direct medium. I mean, you actually rub, whatever it is, you rub the stuff, in this case, with your finger right on the paper. You can't get much more direct than that. Hang on, still trying to catch up with you guys. see your chats. Let's see if I get chats now. There we go. Whew. Susan has a spray that adds moisture to the paper. Do you mind telling me what it is? Just send it in a chat or a comment, either one, or an email. I'd love to know what that is. Now I'm going to remove some of that. Again, that's what you do with pastel. Put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off. There we go. All right, I'm happy now. That's a good starting point. And again, the original drawing, of course, was done with this pencil. Plain old colored, Prismacolor colored pencil. And if you want more outline, you can do as I'm doing here. You can just pick up that same tool and draw away. Michael, pastel matte. That's a spray, I presume? I have not. I will look into that. Again, I don't do pastels a lot, but obviously on a day like this, it's like, oh, I want all the tools that I can, that will help me. Every tool that gives me an advantage, I'm all for that. Okay, now this is a pastel pencil, black, which is a lot blacker, of course, than the colored pencil I was just using, and also allows me to blend, which is what I want to do right now. I'm going to add a little bit of color to this bullet here in a minute. Oh, it's a paper. Oh, okay. In that case, yes, I probably have. It just had a different name. Well, I've used all kinds of things, and maybe not the one you're talking about, but probably have. Sanded pastel paper, that's basically like sandpaper, and it comes in, the company I've used comes in six different grades of roughness. I did a video for that company one time many years ago. All right, now I want to turn this bullet into something slightly bluer. And I'm going to blend everything I'm doing right now. I'm going to blend, so I'm just going to scribble it on fairly quickly. You've seen my videos, Michael, really? My pastel ones. So you must be, as you say, that's your favorite, so you must be a pastel artist, and somehow you stumbled across that series of videos put out by Jerry's Artorama. I'm using an eraser now to erase and to remove some of this. Here's a good tool, a brush. Use that for a lot of different mediums. All right, now, I don't know if I can go straight to white. Yeah, I'm going to try it. So, again, I'll be blending all of this. Michael. It's great paper. You can use lots of layers on it. I am as old as you. Good for you. This old guys hang together. That's great. I think I'm going to do 2 applications of this white. The first one, what I'm doing right now, I'm going to smooth it all out, blend it in, and then come back and do a second layer of highlights. Leaving a little bit of texture. I'm trying to make it look like lead. And lead, as you know, is it's not a real shiny metal, unless it's melted, then it's shiny. Has sort of a mottled texture normally, I think. So that's what I want to try to indicate here. I tell you, being an illustrator, which is what I used to do full time, one of the things I really did enjoy, and still do obviously today, I just don't do much of it, it's just the variety. The fun challenge. Okay, today's assignment, for instance, today's assignment is to interesting map of South Carolina, a hip bone with a bullet through it, and a Civil War bullet. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's just fun. And I never got tired of that. It was, every day was a different adventure. So that's starting to look like a bullet, don't you think? I'll zoom in for a minute here. Yeah. Now, I have another trick up my sleeve if I so choose. If I'm not getting enough pop with these tools, and you know what? Since instead of talking about it, I'm going to do it because I'm not getting enough pop. I'm in my drawer. I'm going to put out just a tiny dab of white gouache right on the tape there. Get out a nice small Winsor Newton Series 7. And this, of course, will give me just a real sharp, crisp highlight. And that's probably enough right there. Yeah, don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. Better to underdo than overdo. Isn't that fun? So, I mean, would you call you'd really have to call this, I guess, a mixed media illustration, wouldn't you? Let me see. It's colored pencil, acrylic, watercolor, and pastel. Yep, that's. I think that's mixed media. And now that I've done that, I find myself wanting to darken the foreground. I'm going to do one more thing after I darken this. That is, I'm going to add some very arbitrary, making it all up kind of stuff, fictitious, if you will, texture. I am using my finger. I really didn't want to get my finger in black pastel. It has a certain way of sticking with you. Doesn't come off as easy as the light stuff. You know, I think all that I just did right there is too dark, right, Michael? An experienced pastel person would say, yeah, but not to worry, right? I have right here a rag. You should be able to take some of that off. Yeah. Not as much as I thought, so here we go again. The eternal blend some more, put some more on it. Oh, I just rubbed my nose. I bet I have a big black brown smudge on my nose now. I'm not going to show you to get your affirmation. We'll just leave that between me and me. What do you say though? Is that looking like a bullet? I'm thinking it is. Again, trying to take a pretty boring subject matter and jazz it up just a little bit without getting ridiculous. All right, here's what I was talking about a few minutes ago. I'm going to put some texture, maybe just grit dots down here. Darks first, lights last. Just so it looks like maybe it's sitting on a piece of leather or, I don't know, something with dots on it anyway. Whatever it's sitting on, it's got dots on it. And then if the dots are bumps, then these little highlights go on the upper left side of the bump. If they're divots, then these highlights go on the lower right side of these dots. Evidently they're bumps because I'm doing the light on up and to the left with where the light is coming from. And just a few dots without a shadow. All right, I'm going to call that done. I've been fiddling long enough. Show you my nose. Not till I give it a good wipe on my sleeve. Any portrait, any pastel artist knows all about the pastel in their face, don't they? Comes with the territory. All right, 3 down, 1 to go. Now, I wish so much that I could spray these. I certainly will not do that. Or what I might conceivably do is scan them as they are and then spray them so that they have some slight degree of stability there. And I think I'm going to crop this illustration down in Photoshop, crop it quite a bit. 3 down, 1 to go. I had talked earlier about the possibility of doing blue on this side, gray on this side. Not sure that I want to do that, but we'll take it one step at a time. The first thing I think I do want to do is add some color to this, the line that goes down the middle, the dividing line. I'm going to add 2 colors. Start with orange, fade to red. Just for variety, that's all. And then I think fade back to orange, I think. I don't want to get too crazy with this. I think what this calls for more than anything else is just some dark outline. Again, this figure, it looks kind of like Abraham Lincoln. I don't know if that was the idea. Again, I'm not exactly copying, but almost copying the sample that my client sent to me. And I will do white highlights, almost certainly with gouache. The man's shirt here, and the dollar signs on these bags of money. Down here on the train, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Well, I can certainly do a white highlight for the light on the front of the train. Do you get the impression I make this stuff up, make it up as we go? That would be a correct impression. And at the moment right here, I just want all of these to be more graphic, more iconish, more hard edge, because they are, of course, in this case, just symbols, simple symbols of what they represent. So if I could figure out what to make white on the train besides the one light, another accent color would be nice, but I don't want to get carried away. I don't want much detail in this at all. That might be all right. Okay, then the factory with smokestacks. The natural accent in this factory, and I'm afraid that's kind of a modern looking factory now that I think about it. Whoops. I'm going to add some windows to it. The natural accent would be blue in the windows, pale blue, reflection of sky. White, white. Honestly, I wish there was a place to put red on the train. Maybe just the side panel, the side door of the train. Well, let's just take it one step at a time. I don't have to make all the decisions all at once. So let's begin by doing the white gouache, and I might find that just the white accents is enough. I don't know. How about buttons? How about 2 buttons? Or how about his skin? How about his face and his hands? Oh yeah, that might be the ticket. Maybe. This one's so small. Yeah, well, we'll start there and see. And then the dollar sign. And I'm going to put white in the windows for the moment. I'm looking and thinking, it doesn't have quite enough pop. Again, I'll take the easiest thing first. Let's do some green on the money bags. Okay. Oh, you know, I can do some green on these bushes down here. That's logical, and keeps me going with the green. And I could do the side of the train green instead of red. See, I'm trying to, if I can do green here and there and here and there. Okay, green on the man's hat. In fact, I can do a green hat, period. So now I have a little bit of color. I can do more on the train. That's good. Oh yeah, it's funny. See, sometimes you have to see something before you can see it. So yeah, green on the train is working just fine. You know, one of those famous green trains. And sure, smokestack can be green too. Then I'm free to do a little more green around the edge of the money bag. And I can make the man's slacks. I don't know if people wore green slacks in Civil War days, but now they do. That's close. That's close to what I'm looking for. I am, however, going to make these lines stronger. And I think down one side of this dividing line, I think just one side, make it thicker and blacker. I'm using my black pencils that I use, Jumbo Jet Black, my Jerry's Artorama. The pencils I use in my oil paintings all the time. There, that's looking better. Yep, and just one more thing, that is ground these objects a little bit. Making, as if you will, a shadow under them. And I think that'll be good enough. Yeah, keep it simple. Better to underdo it than overdo it. All right. Whew. 4 illustrations, except for the scanning and messing in Photoshop, which I won't bring you guys into. Maybe I'll publish 1 or 2 of these on YouTube community, just so, I don't know if anybody wants to see them finished. You've seen them good enough here. But there you go. Half a day in the life of an illustrator. Quick review. Stayed North South Carolina. Broken bone. Civil War bullet. And sharp. Yes, the Jerry's pencil did it. I agree. That made a real difference there. Do I find it difficult, more difficult drawing small? Generally speaking, yes. I think that is correct. You know, I'm looking at this train again, thinking, wait a minute. I'm just gonna can use a little bit more pop, a bit more contrast. I'm looking and thinking. Right, I'm gonna say goodbye to you. You never know, there might be somebody watching who's never seen me before. This is my face. Thanks for watching. I hope to broadcast more today. I'll be downstairs in the garage working on my 6x6 foot painting, which I'm really excited about. Thanks guys for watching. If you haven't, done the like, subscribe, bell, please do all that and share. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.